He thought he could marry another woman behind my back, while I was still his wife. He thought I would never find out. But I showed up on their perfect little wedding day and ruined everything. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Alyssa Carter. I'm 32 years old, and until a few months ago, I thought I had a good marriage. I'd been with my husband, Nathaniel Nate Brooks, for 7 years, married for 5. Our life wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, the kind of life people assume means everything is okay. I believe that too. I never imagined I would one day learn something so shocking that it would make me question my entire relationship. For most of our marriage, Nate was dependable. He had his routines, his habits, the little things he did every day that made me feel safe. We had dinners together, movie nights on weekends, and small trips whenever we had time. I trusted him completely. That trust was something I never thought would shatter. But slowly, without warning, things began to change. It started with small things. Nate coming home later than usual. Calls he wouldn't answer in front of me. Messages he deleted before I could even see his screen light up. When I asked, he always had simple explanations. Work was busy. A project was behind. A client needed him. I didn't want to be the paranoid wife, so I believed him. I convinced myself that every marriage had phases like this. People got busy. Stress happened. Then the late nights became the new normal. The work trips came out of nowhere. One night he said he had to fly out early in the morning for a sudden meeting, but when I asked which city, he stuttered before giving me an answer. It was small, but it stuck with me. His eyes shifted too fast, his tone too flat. It didn't feel right. Still, I tried to push the doubt away. Told myself that maybe he was burning out. Maybe he needed space. Maybe I needed to be more understanding. I didn't want to believe that anything was wrong. I didn't want to believe that the man I loved could hurt me like that. But it felt like something was slipping between us. Something important that I couldn't grab onto no matter how hard I tried. The crack finally appeared on a random afternoon. I remember the moment clearly because it felt so normal until it wasn't. Nate had left his jacket on the couch before rushing out again. I picked it up to hang it, and his phone fell from the pocket. It lit up with a call, a name I didn't recognize and a picture I didn't expect. He grabbed the phone from my hand so fast it startled me. His face went pale, and he snapped at me like I'd done something wrong. That was the moment my stomach dropped. Something was happening. Something he didn't want me to know. And I had no idea how deep that truth went or how much it would change my life. But that day, that was the first real crack in the marriage I thought would last forever. After that moment, things only grew stranger. Nate's behavior shifted in ways that were impossible to ignore. He started lying about small things that didn't even matter. If I asked where he had been, he would give one answer, then later mention something completely different. When I asked why the stories didn't match, he would brush it off and act like I was imagining things. It made me feel unsure of myself, like I was losing my grip on what was real. He began hiding receipts in strange places. Some I found stuffed in jacket pockets, others buried in drawers. Whenever I tried to look at them, he would get angry and accuse me of being controlling. His phone became something he guarded like a treasure chest. He kept it on silent, face down, and never let it out of his sight. If a message came in, he would snatch it up so fast it startled me. The more he pulled away, the more I felt something was deeply wrong. Our home, which once felt warm, slowly turned cold. He avoided conversations, especially about us. If I tried to talk about our relationship, he would shut me down. Sometimes he would walk out of the room. Other times he would twist my words, making me feel like I was the one ruining everything. When I asked if he still loved me, he accused me of being dramatic. When I said I felt distant from him, he said I was imagining problems. Nothing I said felt safe anymore. He even stopped touching me. The smallest forms of affection vanished. No hugs when he came home. No kisses goodnight. No comfort when I looked upset. It felt like living with a roommate who didn't want me there. Nights became long and lonely. I slept beside someone who felt like a stranger, and the silence between us grew deeper every day. I tried talking to friends, but I didn't know how to explain what was happening. I couldn't point to one huge event. It was hundreds of small ones that slowly chipped away at my confidence. I felt isolated, unsure, and embarrassed. A part of me hoped things would go back to normal, but another part already knew something had changed for good. The final push came one afternoon when I visited Nate's mother, Linda Brooks. She's talkative and always slips into conversations she shouldn't. While we were chatting, she casually mentioned how excited she was for Nate's big plans. I froze. I asked what plans she meant, and she laughed like it was common knowledge. She said Nate had been talking about it for weeks, something important he was preparing for. My heart started pounding. He had never said a word to me. No hint, no mention, nothing. I tried to ask for more details, but Linda suddenly looked uncomfortable, like she had said too much. She brushed it off, claiming she must have misunderstood. But I could see in her eyes that she hadn't. I drove home with a feeling I couldn't shake. Whatever Nate was planning, it didn't include me. And that thought felt like a weight sitting on my chest. I didn't know the truth yet, but I could feel it getting closer, waiting to break open. A few days later, the first real clue arrived in the most ordinary way. I was going through the mail like I always did. Most of it was the usual, bills, ads, and random letters Nate never bothered to open. One envelope caught my attention because it looked official. It was addressed to Nate, but I assumed it was another statement or something he forgot to pay, so I opened it without thinking. The moment I unfolded the paper inside, my entire body went cold. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't anything normal. It was an invoice for a wedding venue deposit. The name on top read Autumn Ridge Estate. For a second, I didn't even understand what I was looking at. I just stared at the paper, reading the words over and over, as if they would change if I blinked long enough. My hands started shaking so hard I could barely hold the page. At a wedding venue? A deposit? My stomach twisted so violently I thought I might be sick. I had never heard of this place, so I hurried to grab my phone. When I typed in the name, the first thing that popped up was a photo of a beautiful estate decorated for an outdoor wedding. Every search result said the same thing. It was a location that only hosted weddings. My world felt like it tilted sideways. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened so much it hurt. None of it made sense, yet it made too much sense at the same time. All the lies, the coldness, the secretive behavior. It suddenly formed a picture I wasn't ready to see. I tried to calm myself, but my body wouldn't listen. I felt dizzy, betrayed, and terrified of what this meant. I waited for Nate to come home, pacing in the living room with the invoice in my hand. When he finally walked through the door, I confronted him immediately. I held the paper out and asked him to explain. For a split second, I saw something flash in his eyes, shock, maybe fear, but he covered it quickly. He didn't stumble or hesitate. He smoothly said the deposit was for a co-worker who didn't have a credit card with a high enough limit and had asked him to handle it. His tone was calm, too calm. He acted offended that I even questioned him. He claimed it was nothing, just a favor, and he said it so confidently that someone else might have believed him. But I wasn't someone else. Not anymore. My instincts had been screaming for weeks, and now they were roaring. I didn't argue. I didn't push. I simply nodded and pretended I accepted his excuse. I acted like I believed every word. But deep inside, something snapped into place. My gut told me the truth loud and clear. Nate wasn't just hiding something small. He was hiding something enormous. And whatever it was, it involved another wedding, one I had no place in. That night, while he slept next to me without guilt, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling the last pieces of trust slip away. I didn't know what I would find next, but I knew I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. The truth was there, waiting. And now I was ready to look for it. I couldn't stop thinking about the invoice. It sat in my mind like a ticking clock, getting louder every hour. I knew Nate was lying. I felt it in my bones. So the next morning, when he left for work, I made a decision I never imagined I would make. I grabbed my keys, got in my car, and drove straight to Autumn Ridge Estate. The place looked beautiful from the outside. Large white buildings, tall trees, perfectly trimmed lawns. It didn't feel real that something connected to my life could lead me here. I took a deep breath, walked inside, and told the woman at the desk that I was the bride and needed to confirm some details about an upcoming booking. My voice shook a little, but she didn't question me. She just smiled and asked for the groom's name. When I said Nathaniel Brooks, her face lit up like she recognized it. She clicked through her computer and said, "Oh yes, we have everything set for you too." Those words hit me like a punch in the stomach. I felt like I would collapse right there, but I forced myself to stay calm. She handed me a printed schedule. My eyes moved down the page until they landed on one line that made my whole body go numb. Bride Rachel Monroe. I stared at the name, hoping I was reading it wrong. But it was right there, clear as day. Rachel Monroe. The same woman Nate used to be engaged to years before he met me. The woman he once told me shattered him so badly he could never go back. The woman he said had no place in his life anymore. Yet here she was, listed as the bride. And Nate was the groom. My husband. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I couldn't. My throat closed up, and my hands felt cold. The coordinator kept talking cheerfully about flower arrangements and seating options, but all I heard was a ringing in my ears. Then she mentioned the date. 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks. They were getting married in 3 weeks while I was still wearing my wedding ring, still living in the same house, still thinking we had a chance to fix things. The level of betrayal was so deep it felt unreal. I didn't just feel hurt, I felt humiliated. Like my entire marriage had been a lie, like I didn't matter at all. I folded the schedule, thanked the coordinator with a smile that didn't feel like mine, and walked back to my car. The moment I sat behind the wheel, everything inside me broke. Tears blurred my vision, and I grabbed the steering wheel just to steady myself. Nathaniel Brooks. My husband. Preparing to marry someone else. Planning a life without me while pretending everything was fine. As I sat in that parking lot, one thought repeated over and over. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice he made. And it changed everything. The days after visiting the venue felt like moving through darkness. I couldn't sleep. Every night I lay awake, shaking, staring at the ceiling while tears soaked my pillow. My mind kept replaying everything. Our wedding day, our anniversaries, the small moments when I believed he loved me. I kept asking myself where I went wrong, what sign I missed, how long he had been planning this behind my back. I questioned my worth, my judgment, even my sanity. Every memory that once felt comforting now hurt. I couldn't understand how someone could share a bed with me while preparing to stand at an altar with someone else. The pain was sharp and constant, like a weight pressing on my chest. There were nights I sat on the bathroom floor, hugging my knees, trying to catch my breath. I felt abandoned in a marriage I was still fighting for, even though the fight was already over in Nate's mind. But after days of crying until my eyes burned, something inside me began to shift. The pain didn't disappear, but it hardened. The betrayal sharpened into anger, then slowly into resolve. I realized I couldn't let this break me. I couldn't let Nate decide I was replaceable. I had spent years trying to be a good partner, and he chose to treat me like I didn't matter. I told myself no one would ever make me feel small again. Not him, not Rachel, not anyone. Once that thought settled in, I knew I needed answers. I needed to hear the truth from someone who wasn't going to lie to my face. So I drove to Nate's mother, Linda. I didn't know what I expected, but I hoped she would at least give me honesty. I sat down in her living room, and before I even said anything, she looked nervous. Her hands kept fidgeting with the edge of her sweater that I asked her directly if she knew anything. For a moment she stayed silent, and then her eyes filled with tears. She broke down, saying she didn't want me to get hurt but didn't know how to stop what Nate was doing. She admitted she knew about the wedding plans. She said Nate told her it was better for everyone if he remarried. Better for his future, better for his goals, better for his business opportunities. That I felt sick hearing that. Better for everyone? Like I was a problem that needed to be removed quietly. Linda kept apologizing and saying she felt stuck, but every word only made the truth clearer. I had no allies in that house. They all knew something. They all stayed silent. I stood there holding back tears, realizing I had been surrounded by people who watched my marriage fall apart and said nothing. But as I was leaving, someone else reached out. Someone who didn't want to stay silent anymore. And that one person would change everything. I was halfway home from Linda's house when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. A quiet voice came through the line. Alyssa, it's Grace. Nate's younger sister. The one who usually stayed out of family drama. She sounded nervous, almost scared. She asked if we could meet somewhere private. I agreed, not knowing what to expect, that we met at a small cafe on the edge of town. Grace looked pale, her hands trembling as she wrapped them around a cup she never drank from. The moment we sat down, she whispered, I know everything. And you deserve to know too. My stomach tightened. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear more, but I needed the truth. She told me Nate had been reconnecting with Rachel for almost a year. It started small, old messages, casual conversations, then secret meetings he never mentioned. She explained that Rachel's family was wealthy and influential, but they had a strict image to maintain. They wanted Rachel married before she took over her family's business, and they wanted someone they could present as respectable. Nate saw an opportunity. Not love, not happiness, opportunity. Grace said Nate had been pushing for a business deal that Rachel's father controlled. Marrying Rachel meant access to money, investors, and connections. It wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. He planned to file for divorce after the wedding, making it look like we had separated months earlier. I wouldn't even get a chance to speak before the papers were filed. He wanted me out quietly so he could start his new life clean and polished. Every word hit harder than the last. I sat there frozen, feeling everything twist inside me. My marriage wasn't falling apart because Nate was confused or hurting. It was falling apart because he chose money and status over me. He planned to throw me away like I was nothing. Grace reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Inside were screenshots, text messages, timelines, receipts, everything. Messages between Nate and Rachel talking about when to phase me out. Notes about the wedding planning. Conversations about how to make sure I didn't cause trouble. Proof that the venue deposit was just the beginning that I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt like my heart was breaking all over again. But another part, the part that had been slowly waking up, felt something different. Strength. Clarity. A deep, burning anger that pushed away every tear I thought I had left. Grace looked at me with guilt in her eyes, saying she couldn't stand what her brother was doing. She didn't want to be part of his cruelty. She wanted to help me, not because she wanted revenge, but because she believed I deserved better. She apologized for not coming sooner, for not speaking up earlier, that I felt a strange sense of relief, knowing at least one person in that family saw the truth. I wasn't completely alone. And more importantly, I finally had everything I needed. The proof, the timeline, the whole picture of what he planned to do. I closed the folder and took a deep breath. It was the first time in weeks that my mind felt sharp instead of foggy. Grace asked softly, "What are you going to do?" I looked at her, my voice steady for the first time since this nightmare began. "I'm going to make sure he never forgets what he did to me." That was the moment everything changed. The moment I stopped being the broken wife. The moment I began planning. Alyssa moved carefully after her meeting with Grace. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't ask why. She just acted. The first thing she did was find a lawyer. Quietly, without leaving any trace Nate could notice. She walked into the office with shaking hands but a steady voice, determined to understand what Nate had been planning behind her back. When the lawyer explained her rights, Alyssa felt something change inside her. Nate had treated her like she was already gone. He had acted like she didn't exist. But legally, she was still his wife. She still had power he didn't expect. Then the lawyer said something even more shocking. If Nate married another woman while still married to her, it wasn't just betrayal. It was a crime. Bigamy. A serious one. Something that could destroy his business plans, his reputation, his shiny new image. Alyssa sat there quietly, listening, her heart beating slowly. She thought about Rachel's rich family, about their perfect wedding, about Nate's lies. And instead of stopping any of it, she decided she would let the wedding happen. She would let every guest, every camera, every smiling face witness the truth. She walked out of the lawyer's office with a new purpose. She wasn't weak. She wasn't abandoned. She wasn't the woman Nate thought he could discard quietly. She went home and began gathering every piece of proof she had. She opened old messages. She downloaded screenshots Grace had shared. She looked for financial documents Nate carelessly left lying around. His fake budgets. His promises to investors. His messages to Rachel. She copied everything and stored it safely. Every night, when Nate texted her simple, cold messages pretending to figure things out, she said nothing. She stopped expecting anything from him. Instead, she focused on building a case that would hit harder than anything he imagined. She prepared legal filings the lawyer told her were necessary. She saved them, ready to be used at the exact moment. Then she bought a dress. It wasn't a wedding gown. It wasn't glamorous or expensive. It was a simple white dress that fit her perfectly. Clean. Sharp. Symbolic. A reminder that she was the real wife, not a forgotten shadow in Nate's life. Grace stayed in touch every day. She felt guilty about her brother's actions and wanted to help Alyssa any way she could. She gave her the full wedding schedule. The location. The guest list. The timeline down to the minute. The moment the ceremony would start. The moment Rachel would walk down the aisle. The moment Nate would lift his head and think he had everything under control. Alyssa didn't tell anyone her plan. She didn't need to rehearse what she would do or how she would walk in. She only waited. Calm, steady, ready. Everything was falling into place. Every secret Nate tried to hide was now a weapon in her hands. The wedding day was coming closer, and Alyssa didn't feel fear anymore. She felt prepared. Autumn Ridge Estate looked like something out of a magazine. Fairy lights hung from the trees, roses lined the walkway, and the chairs were arranged in perfect rows. Expensive decorations sparkled under the afternoon sun. It was the kind of wedding people dreamed about, elegant, flawless, and carefully planned. And Alyssa stood at a distance, watching it all with steady eyes. No one knew she was there. No one knew what was coming. Cars kept pulling up. Guests stepped out smiling, dressed in their best clothes. They greeted each other, took pictures, and admired the setup. They had no idea that the man they were there to celebrate wasn't who he pretended to be. Alyssa didn't feel nervous. She felt strangely calm, as if she had already accepted everything. Then the music began. Soft, romantic, expensive sounding. Every head turned as Rachel walked down the aisle in a shimmering gown that caught the light with every step. Her parents sat proudly in the front row. Flowers filled the air with perfume. Cameras flashed. Everyone stared at her like she was the center of a perfect moment. And there was Nate, standing at the altar in a crisp suit, smiling confidently. He looked like a man who believed everything was under control, like the world belonged to him. He didn't even glance around, so sure that Alyssa was out of the picture forever. The officiant lifted his book and began speaking. "We are gathered today." That was the moment Alyssa stepped forward. Her heels made soft, deliberate sounds on the stone path. Grace walked right behind her, keeping her head high. The chatter died instantly. A wave of confusion spread through the guests as they turned toward the unexpected interruption. People whispered, pointing, trying to understand who she was and why she was walking straight down the aisle in a white dress. Rachel froze mid-step. Her smile fell away. The music faded. The photographers lowered their cameras. Nate turned, and the color drained from his face. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked like a man watching his world collapse in slow motion. Alyssa didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. She simply held up the marriage certificate, clear, undeniable, official. The document that proved she was still Nate's legal wife. The document that made the entire ceremony illegal. The officiant stared at it in shock. Alyssa calmly handed over the legal proof her lawyer had prepared. He read it, blinked, then looked at Nate with disbelief. A few guests gasped. Others began arguing. Rachel's mother stood up, furious. Rachel screamed at Nate, demanding answers. Some guests pulled out their phones. Some covered their faces. Others muttered that they knew something was off. Nate stepped forward, voice shaking, trying to explain, trying to deny, trying anything. But the more he spoke, the worse it sounded. His confidence was gone. His charm was useless. Every lie he had told was falling apart in front of everyone. Alyssa didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply stood there, calm and steady, while the chaos exploded around her. She had already won the moment she walked in. The truth was out, and there was no going back. The chaos at the wedding was only the beginning. Once Alyssa walked away from the ceremony, she went straight to her lawyer and filed the papers she had prepared. The evidence was strong and clear. Nate had tried to marry another woman while still being married to her. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a crime. Her lawyer helped her press charges for attempted bigamy and fraud, and the case moved forward faster than Nate expected. He had always believed he could talk his way out of anything, but this time the law was not on his side. When the news reached the investors Nate had been trying to impress, everything changed. The business deal he had been counting on collapsed instantly. The wealthy family that promised him financial backing wanted nothing to do with scandals. They withdrew their support, and the company Nate dreamed of building fell apart before it even started. Word spread quickly, and people began distancing themselves from him. His reputation crumbled in just a few days. Rachel didn't stay quiet either. After the public humiliation at the wedding, she ended things immediately. She didn't want to be associated with scandal or legal trouble. Her parents were furious, and Rachel left the estate with tears and anger, shouting at Nate for ruining her image. She refused to answer his calls or messages. All the promises she made to him disappeared the moment her pride was hurt. Nate's family reacted in different ways. Some tried to defend him, saying he was confused or under pressure. Others blamed Rachel for encouraging him. But many couldn't deny the truth Alyssa had exposed. Arguments broke out. Old issues resurfaced. The family began to split apart, each side choosing who they believed. Through it all, only Grace remained clear and firm. She had seen everything. She had watched her brother lie and manipulate. She chose to stay by Alyssa's side, refusing to excuse Nate's behavior. Alyssa quietly moved out of the house, taking what belonged to her. She filed for divorce and made sure she received every asset the law allowed. She didn't fight out of anger. She fought because she deserved what she was owed after years of loyalty. With her lawyer's guidance, she protected herself financially and emotionally. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was standing on solid ground. Then the final truth came out. Nate hadn't reconnected with Rachel because of love or old feelings. He went back to her because her father offered him financial incentives, connections, investment, money he could never earn on his own. He had thrown away his entire marriage for the hope of a richer life. He gambled everything on greed and secrecy. But in the end, he lost it all. His marriage, his reputation, his business plans, his family, even Rachel. Alyssa walked away stronger, supported by Grace and free from the lies that once trapped her. Nate was left alone with the consequences he created, facing a future he could no longer control. Months passed, and life slowly returned to a rhythm that felt like my own. I moved into a new apartment, a place that was all mine. No one else's decisions, secrets, or lies could touch me there. The walls were bare at first, but I filled them with things that made me happy. Art, books, plants, and furniture I chose myself. Every small decision reminded me that I was in control now, and the feeling was liberating that I started rebuilding my confidence piece by piece. Simple things at first, making my own meals, walking alone in the park without worry, enjoying quiet mornings with coffee on the balcony. Then bigger steps. Returning to work with a focus on my own goals, reconnecting with friends I had neglected during the chaos, and even learning to trust myself again. Every day I woke up stronger than the day before, realizing that I had lost nothing. Everything Nate had taken from me was never truly mine to lose. What I had lost, I now saw clearly, were the illusions of love and loyalty he never gave me. That I often thought about the wedding, about the moment I stepped in and held the proof in front of everyone. It felt like a turning point, a moment of clarity. That day didn't destroy me. It freed me. It revealed the truth about a man who was never meant to love me properly, and in that revelation, I found strength I didn't know I had. Grace became a constant presence in my life. She had been the unexpected angel during the chaos, the one who gave me the knowledge, courage, and support I needed. We spent hours talking, laughing, and just being normal people together after everything that had happened. She reminded me that family can come in unexpected forms, and loyalty isn't always tied to blood. Her friendship became one of the most valuable parts of this new chapter of my life. Looking back, I realized betrayal doesn't destroy you. It exposes the cracks, yes, but it also shows you who was never meant to be part of your life. And sometimes the things that feel like the worst pain are actually the moments that push you toward freedom. Crashing that wedding wasn't about revenge alone. It was about reclaiming myself and walking into a future that I controlled, a life I could live on my own terms. Now I wake up every morning feeling free, strong, and unshakable. I don't worry about Nate or Rachel or the mess they left behind. I've learned to value my own worth, my own happiness, and my own peace. I smile knowing that I didn't just survive betrayal. I used it to build something far better. Life has a way of showing you what you truly deserve, and I finally understand that. Betrayal was never the end for me. It was the beginning of the life I was always meant to live.